The courtroom was silent as the judge delivered his verdict. 10 years in prison, he announced, his voice firm. The defendant, a black man in his early 30s, stood motionless, his face unreadable. The judge believed he had done his duty. Another case closed, another criminal off the streets. But then something unexpected happened. A murmur rippled through the courtroom as a stranger rushed forward, holding a piece of paper. The judge frowned. He wasn't used to interruptions, but the urgency in the man's voice made him pause. As he took the document and scanned its contents, his expression shifted from stern authority to pure disbelief. His grit on the paper tightened. The man he had just sentenced, this so-called criminal, was someone he never expected. Someone whose past would change everything. The judge's heart pounded. Had he just made the biggest mistake of his career? The judge's hands trembled slightly as he reread the document. His mind raced, piecing together the shocking truth. How could this be? He glanced up at the man standing before him, the same man he had just sentenced. For the first time, he noticed the calmness in his eyes, as if he had been expecting this moment all along. The courtroom, once filled with murmurs, now felt unbearably tense. The defense attorney shifted uneasily, sensing the shift in energy. The judge cleared his throat, his voice quieter this time. "Is this true?" he asked, directing his question to the man in handcuffs. The man simply nodded. The judge exhaled sharply, suddenly feeling the weight of his decision. He had spent years believing in justice, trusting the system, but now doubt crept in. Had he just condemned the wrong man? And if so, who really was standing in front of him? The judge's eyes flickered between the document and the man standing before him. A dozen questions swirled in his mind, but none formed into words. The room felt smaller, the weight of his decision pressing down on him. The man, calm, almost resigned, held his gaze. He wasn't pleading, wasn't asking for mercy. It was as if he already knew something the judge didn't. The defense attorney finally broke the silence. "Your Honor, I think you should take a moment to review the information." His voice was measured, but there was an urgency beneath it. The judge hesitated, then gestured for the bailiff to uncuff the man. A gasp rippled through the crowd. The prosecutor frowned, but said nothing. The judge turned his attention back to the document. A name stood out, one he never expected to see. His chest tightened. If this was true, then he hadn't just sentenced any man. He had sentenced someone whose past was deeply connected to his own. The judge's grip on the paper tightened. His pulse pounded in his ears as he read the name again. It was impossible, yet there it was, printed in black and white. He looked up, his breath unsteady. The man before him wasn't just another defendant. He was someone from his past. Someone he never thought he'd see again. The courtroom was eerily silent, all eyes fixed on the judge. The prosecutor shifted, sensing something was wrong. "Your Honor, is there a problem?" he asked cautiously. The judge didn't answer right away. His mind was racing, flashing back to years ago, memories buried deep, now rising to the surface. The man standing before him had once saved his life. A sharp inhale escaped the judge's lips. The truth was unraveling faster than he could process. His own sense of justice, his belief in the system, was it all about to crumble? The judge's throat felt dry. He glanced at the man again, searching his face for any sign of recognition, any hint that this was some kind of mistake. But the man just stood there, watching, waiting. He wasn't shocked. He wasn't pleading for justice. He already knew. The judge's fingers trembled as he set the document down. His past was colliding with his present in a way he never expected. The man in front of him wasn't just connected to his life. He was the reason the judge was even standing there today. Years ago, in a moment of chaos, this man had stepped in, changed everything. And now, here they were, roles reversed, their fates intertwined once again. But just as the judge opened his mouth to speak, the doors to the courtroom burst open. A uniformed officer rushed in, holding another file. "Your Honor," he said, his voice urgent, "you need to see this immediately." The judge's heart pounded as he took the file from the officer's hands. He flipped it open, his eyes scanning the pages, and then he froze. His breath hitched. This couldn't be real. The man he had just sentenced wasn't guilty. In fact, he was never supposed to be on trial at all. A clerical error, a misfiled report, somewhere along the line, his identity had been switched with someone else's. The real suspect was still out there. A cold chill ran through the judge's body. He looked up at the man standing before him, the weight of his mistake crushing down on him. The man had known all along but had said nothing. Why? The judge's voice was barely a whisper. Why didn't you tell me? The man gave a small, knowing smile. Because I needed to see if justice would work the way it was supposed to. The courtroom erupted in shock, but before anyone could react, the officer's radio crackled to life. Suspect spotted. He's inside the building. The judge's blood ran cold. The real criminal was here, and they were all in danger. The judge barely had time to react before the doors burst open again. Officers rushed in, weapons drawn, as shouts filled the courtroom. Chaos erupted. The real suspect, a man who had walked free while another took his place, was finally cornered. He had tried to disappear into the crowd, but justice had caught up with him at last. As the officers secured the scene, the judge turned back to the man he had wrongfully sentenced. Their eyes met, and for the first time, the judge felt the weight of what almost happened. "I'm sorry," he said, his voice heavy with regret. The man gave a slow nod, as if accepting the apology, though the damage had already been done. "Justice isn't just about rules," he said. "It's about getting it right." The judge watched as the innocent man walked free, knowing this moment would change him forever.